today. Today, I have a really special treat for you. Jennifer Best is the CEO of her, well, actually, she leads the marketing team and is the president of marketing. So, president of marketing, not necessarily the CEO of AAA Speakers Bureau. And she has some incredible data about what's going on in the industry right now. She also has extensive background, and especially in the area of how, what does it mean to be a speaker today in today's world, right? And how to take that voice, not just to stages, but also to corporations and some other really creative ways to grow as an impactful and prosperous speaker in the industry. So, welcome to the show, Jennifer.
Thank you so much, Antoinette. I appreciate the time today, and I'm excited to talk about AAE's benchmark report with you.
Well, tell me a little bit about what got you into this space. Why do you care about the speaking industry? What connected you with
I don't
AAE?
really know. I am actually a longtime marketer, and I have worked often in service-oriented B2B industries. And when this opportunity came up with AAE down in Durham, I was really excited about it because it brought together some of the skills that I had in marketing, which was promoting brands in the space in a B2B and also kind of a B2B to C area where you're indirectly influencing an audience. And so one of the companies I worked for before AAE focused on matching, and it focused on matching at that point doctors with patients with doctors. And so this is very similar to that in that we are always looking to match great speakers with an event organizer, an event, and make sure that the missions and the talents overlap, so that we have a great experience and outcome. So it naturally aligned.
Nice, nice. Well, tell me a little bit about, I mean, you're obviously your finger is on the pulse of marketing in the space of speaker development, right? Somebody who is a speaker who is building their career, and then you're now within the whole organization of an actual bureau. But I love that you didn't stop there. You're involved in numerous organizations, the American Marketing Association, the Meeting Planners International Association, Forbes Communications Council, the American Heart Association, all of these spaces that if you are a speaker who is serious about your career, you need to keep your finger on the pulse of what these organizations are looking for and what the trends are and what's going on. Dive a little bit deeper into number one, why you spend your valuable time, right, even in these organizations. And number two, how do you keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on in this space?
Sure. So, I mean, I love every single one of those organizations. I've been on the board for the American Marketing Association Triangle chapter here in North Carolina for the last year and a half. I spent a year as their VP of programming, and that is basically planning events, working with speakers, finding locations, selling tickets, that kind of thing. This year, I took on community relations, which is involving mentorship and community service, and collegiate relations. And all of these things I feel like relate back to what I do for a living. I mean, really, public speaking skills are something that even if you are a professional speaker, you know the importance. If you want to be a professional speaker, it's so critical to get that experience. And so being involved with organizations like these are great opportunities for you to like test the waters, get out there and speak in front of an audience, determine if this is the path you want to go on, and it can really sell it for you. So that's really a big part of why like I volunteer with those. And so it's also great for AAE to get some visibility as well. So
Sure, for sure. And I love it. I love what you guys are doing in the marketplace, and you really are helping those emerging speaking voices really get themselves out there and get heard. And then if you're an established speaker, right, wanting to take your career to the next level, I think it's always great, even if you have an agent or you're maybe working with some other bureaus and agencies, to develop relationships with multiple um, bureaus and agencies. I know that might sound a little counterproductive for some, especially me as an agent,
mhm.
right? It might sound a little counterproductive for me to say that, but it absolutely isn't. At the end of the day, the end goal is to get your voice, your our audience's voices, right? Heard to the
Yeah.
most, to the furthest uh, possibilities within their realm. And we can only do that by linking arms together as fellow bureaus, as fellow agencies. Because
Mhm.
there's just going to be times where I've got the right speaker for whatever you might have in the works, vice versa, or really just joining forces. There's always such opportunity when you join forces versus kind of keep everything tight to your chest. Tell me a little bit,
Yeah, you
Jennifer.
are preaching to the choir on that.
I
I'm a
love
big
that.
fan of that. We actually, I mean, we're a buyer's agency, so we work with the organizations who book. We don't represent speakers, so we rely on partnerships with you, with others in our segment, to be able to bring together the speakers that they represent with the clients that we represent. And so it's a little bit of a different angle from a speakers bureau perspective from what's in the market. So it typically requires a little bit of explaining of how we do what we do, but we completely value the necessity to amplify a voice. And if that voice is featured and being promoted by multiple bureaus, that's totally fine with us. We love that. We love to be able to expand the voices to get people in front of our clients, because ultimately it's about them and making them happy, and then their audience is also being happy. So
Yes, Jennifer, this is,
agree.
I love that you dove into this direction. I was going to go a little bit different direction, but I want to land here for just a moment. And we are going to, a little bit later in this show, talk about your application process and kind of how the nuts and bolts of that works. But before we go there, and before we dive into some other areas, I really want to dive in with you when it comes to the data of what's going on in the speaking industry right now and how you can actually keep up with what's going on to keep yourself relevant and maximizing your opportunities. Before we go there though, can you dive just a little bit deeper into what are the core things that set a buyer's agency apart, right? Your bureau, your bureau model apart versus maybe
Mhm.
a bureau where you sign up, maybe pay some money, you sit on a shelf with other speakers and hope that you're the one that's picked, or you get an agent, and link arms with an agency. All of those have their place and their value. What sets your model apart, and why would somebody want to pursue adding you to their ecosystem of what they're doing to grow as a speaker?
Sure, happy to. So yeah, we are a little bit of a different kind of speakers bureau. We started in 2002, and really with the realization from our CEO at that moment in time that he was a sports booking agent, and he was involved in a lot of transactions and realized that the clients sometimes came in without representation, the people who were booking speakers, and that's where this idea was born for what AAE does. We made the conscious decision not to exclusively represent speakers because we believe that having these partnerships is better for our business. It's better for our clients. It gives us the opportunity to have the broadest range of speaker recommendations. And the reason we want to do that is because we don't want to recommend a speaker because we're contractually bound to recommend a speaker. We want to recommend a speaker regardless of what either they're with an agency or not, because they're the best possible option to have a great outcome with our client. And so that is different from an agency maybe that has exclusive representation. We don't do marketing necessarily for our speakers. Like we have a website we manage collectively, but we're not the kind of agency that will go out and build your marketing plan for you. If you have a marketing agency and you're an exclusive with them or you're represented by an agency, they typically will select a smaller subset of speakers. They will do all of the marketing and promotion or a lot of the marketing and promotion for that speaker, and make sure that that speaker's information is in front of bureaus like mine and others. And so they operate a little bit differently. I mean, there's pros and cons to both. I do believe that it's really important, like you started the show with talking about, that there is definitely a sentiment, in my opinion, in this industry where we're better together. We're better when we all partner together. We get more visibility. We bring a lot of business to other agencies in our space, and that's great. But it's important to know that there are differences between exclusive representation, having representation from an agency versus having a buyer's agency like ours, where our representation goes to the clients, universities, corporations that we work with regularly. So hopefully
Yes,
that
okay,
explains
we are
it.
so sisters on so much of what you said, Jennifer, and thank you for sharing all of that. So before I was an
Sure.
agent, I actually was a producer and I produced large scale, very large scale events. At that time, it was in the natural wellness space. I have since, yes, well-being is a huge part of my niche, but personal and professional development has really kind of grown into that space. And one thing that would be very difficult for me as a producer is when I did my call for speakers, right? The agencies would come out of the woodworks and they would just try to push their speakers on me, whether or not they were a good fit. So I love that you care about it's not in being non-exclusive, that you're not beholden
Mhm.
to push a speaker who maybe is not necessarily that perfect fit for that particular organization, and your openness to partner with other organizations, other uh, like businesses, to make sure that the
Mhm.
right speaker gets on the right stages. Well, I'm non-exclusive for that exact reason. That was something about the industry that I didn't love, being on the other side of things. I certainly wasn't going to contribute to that. So we are better together. Absolutely love that spirit. And that is how the voices with the solutions to the prayers people are praying at night are going to get heard. And as they elevate their speaking careers, then also those that they help are finding those solutions and they are elevated as well. So that's what it's all about, right? At the end of the day, as we help a speaker get more prosperous, create more impact, then there's sustainability there, right? And they can continue getting those good messages out there. So thank you for sharing that. Tell me a little bit about,
Happy.
you rely, or at least you look at, right, the speaking industry benchmark report. Some of us know what that's about and some of us have absolutely no idea what that is. What is it and why should we care?
Okay, great question. So we created the Speaking Industry Benchmark Report in 2021, and the intent of this report was to create a resource that combined both event organizer sentiment and speaker sentiment into a single report so that we could identify areas where we could make the talent booking transaction a little more smooth. And so I don't know that there are many out there. I know there's a lot of reports that will cover one side or the other, but to my knowledge, this is the only one that I've seen that really brings sentiment together. And so throughout the entire report, um, you'll see combinations of, here's what planner said, here's what speaker said. And the goal obviously is to bring transparency to our industry like we've been talking about. Like we know that, I mean, that was one thing when I came into this market. I came from healthcare and technology spaces, and I was always really surprised. I was like, what do you mean nobody's really talking about how this works? Nobody's really talking about this industry, and this industry is awesome. Why not? And so this is kind of a little bit of a snapshot into the sentiment from the survey, what's going on in their worlds. How are they making decisions about who they pick? What is their timeline like? What is their budget like? With what matters most to speakers when they're presented with an offer? What do they include in their offer? And so it's a fun little mix of really what turns out to be really insightful data about what's going on in our industry when it comes to speaking.
So once you have the data, how, okay, I'm a speaker, I go to your industry, your speaking industry benchmark report. How can I then utilize some of that content to then help me attract more speaking engagements, maybe help price my speaking engagements a little bit differently, help me open some more doors? Like, what are some of the key ways I can utilize that data that you guys have worked so hard in putting together so that it will actually make a
Mhm.
difference in my career, my speaking career?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of data in there. It's over 30 pages long, full of data. So there's definitely key topics and trends. We'll talk about that, I guess, in a minute. And those are things that if you are a speaker in the space to understand what's going on, what's in demand from planners, right? This is what they're asking for. They're saying they're planning events around these topics. So does your topic fit within the realm of that or not? Or are you considering expanding your maybe your selection of speeches? And I want to consider, for example, AI is very popular. Um, talking about maybe a healthcare angle with AI, right? There's also a good bit of sentiment around what are the pain points working with each other. So we ask planners, what are the biggest pain points you have when you work with a speaker? And so if I'm a speaker, I'm taking every note down and I'm saying, oh gosh, it's, not understanding the audience. I'm going to ask extra questions around the audience and then repeat back to the planner. Here is what I heard you say, making sure you understand. So there's little nuggets throughout the entire report without giving too much away. I'd love you guys to download it when you can. But I do think that there's definitely a lot of insight for speakers, which is why we always get a lot of participation from speakers. And then we also have seen speakers sharing their findings from the report with others. So
Yes, so we are going to look at that together. And so those of us that are on video, you'll be able to see that. But either way, I'm going to put a link to the AEE. I hope I'm getting that right. AAE,
AAE,
AEE.
AAE
Um,
speakers.
what does that stand for? American,
All American Entertainment
All
was the company was
American.
founded as All
Okay.
American Entertainment, and as we got going, there was a little bit of confusion around entertainment, what that meant.
Yep.
Party planning, necessarily birthday parties, weddings. That's not really our jam. Our jam is corporate events, and so that's where we went the direction of AAE Speakers Bureau from a brand perspective when I started. So
Okay, so we're going to
that
put
was kind of a
the
brand decision, but some people will still call us All American. That's fine too.
Okay, All American or AAE. We are going to put AAE's
The A or
benchmark
AAE.
report in the show notes. And we're also going to take a quick look at it together for those of us who are in video. Um, and if you're not with us on video, I'll be verbalizing what we're looking at. That's in a moment, though. Tell me a little bit, Jennifer, about will it help me understand what kind of speaking fees or what kind of speaker that I can ask for and what kind of speaker budgets are out there? Does this particular report kind of dive into that, or is there another way that I might be able to get a better pulse of what organizations, especially corporate, in the corporate realm, right, are actually paying for speakers in the different genres, right? They've got well-being initiatives for their employees. They also have professional development initiatives. And will it show me the nuances and the differences of what these different kind of areas are able to command with regards to their budgets?
That's a great question. We did not dig in at a specific topic level for budgets, but we did calculate some average budgets based on it was about 340 respondents who were speakers this year. The report itself um, shared the average was around 15,000 based on respondents. That is anybody who responded to the survey. That's not necessarily speakers that we work with in a bureau. Typically, the speakers that are within a bureau are garnering a higher price point for us to work with them and a client. So that was definitely an interesting thing. Another thing that comes up quite a bit is travel incidentals.
Mhm.
A lot of our speakers that we survey don't include that in their speaking fees. And so we educate our event organizers that remember you're going to have to add on top of this for incidentals and for travel for your event. And so when they're working with budgets, they need to remember to take that into account. This year, we found that about 82% of event organizers told us that they're planning the same or more events this year. And so we know already, I mean, anybody who's, been out to eat or knows their costs for hosting an in-person event have increased like faster than speaking fees have increased.
Yes.
So planners are making hard decisions all the time, which they've done every year. So I've got a couple of theories on that I would love to share with you. Like one is that we do tend to get requests for local speakers. So people within a geography where it'll limit the expense of a travel. They won't need airfare. They can have, ground transportation
Yep.
instead. And so we're seeing a little bit of that, local speakers within a market. We also are seeing in the report fewer requests for things like meet and greets and typical add-ons. It's not across the board, but we're seeing fewer of those. So that's a really interesting thing. And then the biggest thing I would say is that organizers seem to be looking for value. So they're looking more for value than celebrity. So what is my audience taking away? What is the engagement? What is the experience? That feeling that they're going to walk away with is more important than the celebrity on stage who maybe just, hey, I'm a celebrity. We love celebrities, by the way. No offense, guys. So I think that it's really interesting if you are somebody who is trying to figure out what your fee is. There's some things I want to mention that one is there's a ton of competition. There's actually, we think, and when I've talked with other industry partners, more competition now than ever before. I mean, there are a lot of speakers out there, and there's the same, maybe a little bit more events out there. And
Mhm.
so that makes it very, very hard to get in front of the right audience. And so just recognize that there is that increased competition out there for speakers between, you've got experienced speakers who've been doing this a long time, and then you've got people who are new to the industry. And there's not necessarily, there's only a limited subset of opportunities to speak. So I think that's an important takeaway. When it comes to fees, we see this from time to time at AAE. Like somebody will come to us and say, "Oh, our fees just went up." And then what ends up happening sometimes, if they don't know the market that they're in and who they're competing against, they can price themselves right out of their market. So even if you say, for example, you charge ten to $20,000 for a speech, and you're busy and you're booked all year round and you're having a great time, and you're like, you know what, people love me. I'm gonna go up to 20 to 30 or 30 to $50,000, and all of a sudden it's crickets. And that's why, because you were in the right spot for your price point for your service with the competition that you should be with. And so my advice is to just know who you're competing against. There are speaking, you can see the clients you want to work for. You can follow them on social media, see who they're hiring to speak, and kind of get an estimate for what that person might have cost that client. But you should know who your market is. And if you know who those speakers are that you're competing against, it'll help you set your pricing so that you stay competitive. Because if there are fewer opportunities with more speakers, you don't want to price yourself right out of that.
Yes,
So
okay, so
I know
many
I
points.
talked a
I
lot.
took 3 pages of notes because no, all of this is so, so important. And so if you don't mind, I'm gonna address a few of these points because I don't want to gloss over them. There were such deep insights that you are giving. And these are insider insights, my beautiful Speak Pack listeners.
Mhm.
These are tips and strategies that you're not going to find in a book. It's really just going to come from somebody like Jennifer Best, who is in the industry day in and day out. And she has those kind of behind the scenes insights and she's laying it all out for you. So I hope you're taking as many notes as I am, if not more, because these are amazing. So, first and foremost, yes, I had a speaker who just
Mhm.
lifted his price
Thank
just $1,000. And he went from being very busy to things really slowing down just by $1,000. And it just put him in that
you. Wow.
search bracket where it's kind of like pricing a house, right? Real estate agents will be really they will really recommend, like, let's say you want 300,000 for your house to go in at maybe 295,000, only because when they search, people are searching for maybe houses under 300,000, yours still comes up in that search string, right? And so these are trends. This is why this data is so important. If that average price point out there is 15,000 and you go up to even just 17,000, it then is people as these speaker bookers are searching, they have a budget of 15,000, right? And your data showed that's kind of on average right now. Then they go searching for speakers, under 15,000. You're out of it. You're out of that bracket. Now you're in the ones who are maybe 20, 35,000, which there's nothing wrong with that, but no, you've just kind of priced yourself out of a whole, probably the core of the corporate speaking engagements that are out there. I do have a clarification question for you, Jennifer, and that is, when you said
Sure.
that this report brought back that the average budget for speakers is around 15,000, is that so? Two differentiations that I'd like to make. Number one, is that
Yeah, that is
$15,000?
actually the speaker fee. The budget. sorry, the speaker, that is actually the speaker fee. The budgets were in the 20,000, 22 or
for the year?
$23,000 range. And the
Or
difference in that really can reflect the incidentals and things. So,
so the 20,000 is for per occasion or event, not for the year. Is that right? For the most part.
right. Oh yeah, not for the year. And a lot of clients will book multiple events throughout the year. And every event doesn't have the same budget either. So they might be an annual huge conference and then smaller subset events. So,
That was my second question. Yeah, we're just on the
oh,
same mind frame. So I know for like there may be quarterly conventions, employee incentive events, those kinds of things. 15,000 for a keynote speaker is pretty right in there. But let's talk about their internal L&D programs that might even be, of course, post pandemic. There's been all kinds of opportunities that are now remote for speakers, and that is really really powerful. That is really the one space where more opportunity has opened up. You mentioned the competition being fierce. That's exactly what I have found as well, especially for those speakers who will not pivot. They've been maybe a corporate speaker for many years. They always like to go on location. They're really not set up for remote. They're kind of cutting themselves out of this whole new segment of opportunity. And something I have found in the mass exodus, right, from the corporate workforce is everybody who exited, or a good number of people who exited, have either become a consultant or a speaker. So we're flooded, right, with all of these people who've just kind of picked up paintbrush will be painter, right? They don't necessarily have the the grit, right? The real life experience of being a corporate trainer or an on-stage speaker. So you can really differentiate yourself in that way. And there's ways to do that. But you are going to be competing
mhm,
in a bigger pool, and consistency, knowing these data points and really speaking to these data points are going to be more important than ever before if you're going to get consistent speaking. And consistency is king, right? Even if you know you want to take November and December off, hire an assistant or whoever, or an agent or a bureau, to make sure they're still getting your name out there, because in 3 months from them, then you're going to say, whoa, why don't I have my usual 2 or 3 speaking engagements this month? It's because in November or December you kind of relaxed on that. And it's all just ties into, if you're going to have a serious speaking career, then
mhm.
you got to treat it like you would any other company. And yes, it's work, it's of the highly
100%.
rewarding work, but that's really the way that you keep it alive and keep it going and keep it um, flowing with regards to momentum. And one engagement should lead to another engagement done right. I also love that you said that, let's say I have a $15,000 budget as an HR executive, but I've got to understand that most speakers also do have that travel and those incidental prices over and above. So if I want consistent engagements, understanding the data that you guys came up with, that because of that, many of these organizations are looking more in a local or regional basis. Well, then that tells me, hey, if AT&T or Comcast or some of these other mid to high level corporations are happen to be within my drivable region, then those are the doors I should really be knocking on, because my that just opens up that opportunity even just a little bit more. So this data that AAE has put together is so
Mhm,
it's unlike, there's other places you can go for data, right? But this is kind of more
mhm.
grassroots, more nitty gritty. And I absolutely love that you guys are doing this for speakers. We can easily think, well, I'm not a big name. How can I go after that $15,000? I have totally found what you mentioned, Jennifer, that celebrities are
Mhm.
not what these corporations are looking for. They're looking for people who are relatable. Yes, they'll bring celebrities into certain situations, but especially when you're looking at
Absolutely.
their internal programs, L&D, their wellness initiatives, those kind of initiatives, those internal initiatives, and even some of their bigger events. They want relatable, authentic personalities. Where if you and I are sitting in the audience, we're like, I can relate to that. I can do what this person is saying, right? I just feeling a little bit more down to earth and tangible. We were all destabilized as a world, and we just want to know
Mhm.
what's foundational, what's real, where can I really plant my feet and feel solid. If I'm hearing, some multi-million dollar, um, let's just say celebrity or ex politician or ex pro athlete, whoever it might be, telling me how to just be calm in adversity and you're going to be okay in the world, that kind of thing. I'm like, well, that's easy for you to say. You have an endless, bottomless bank account. You've got connection. You've got things that I don't necessarily have. And I think that corporations are seeing that people need to be able to relate in order to really
Mhm.
latch on and believe in those transformations. So you brought
Yeah,
so
I
much
will. I
to
will
the
say, I mean, some of my favorite speakers that I've talked to or worked with, sometimes they are known athletes and things, and they still have the gift of being able to share a compelling story. And I'm going to give my friend Scott Hamilton a shout out here because
yes,
Olympic figure skater, cancer survivor. He, when we started the pandemic, you mentioned earlier, AAE did about 1% of our business was virtual events, just for context. Okay, everything was live events, and then everything shut down. Today, this year, we're looking at about 20% of our events will be virtual. There are still companies that have fully remote workforces that need to have events. But back early in the pandemic, we had a webinar series, and Scott was a guest on our webinar series, talking about how to face adversity. And I mean, he had our agents and our company in tears. I mean, it was just so moving.
yes,
So if I guess the key takeaway is you've got to be able to deliver the experiences that an event audience wants. And if you have the celebrity name, that's great. If you don't have the celebrity name, it's not necessarily required. There are plenty of speakers who are completely and totally amazing at what they do that might be lesser known. And that's why our company exists, is because we want to have the pulse on those folks so that we can then put their names in front of a client and say, wait a second, have you heard of this guy? Probably not, but take a look at what he's doing and here's some video of what he's saying. And so it's about substance. It's not about fluff anymore. It's about
yes.
delivering those compelling
Yes.
messages.
And being relatable. So I'm glad that you said that because I actually represent some pro athletes. And one is Joshua Ritchie, and
Great.
he is an incredible, dynamic human being, but he was brought to his knees with some certain circumstances in his life, some of his own doing, some gambling issues, and some other issues. That brings you down from this untouchable kind of superstar, right? He happened to have this athletic talent that I may not see, might be able to relate myself to, but I can relate to being brought down to my knees from maybe external trauma or losses or things outside of my control or some decisions that I made that um, resulted in lost opportunity or whatever it might be. That brings him to a relatable place where I can
Mhm.
you know, hitch on to that star and see, okay, and he's redefined himself and now he's reemerged. So there's definitely ways to do that, for sure. And I would say if you are one of those more recognizable names who is listening to this show, it's all about relatability, right? And authenticity and being vulnerable. Another um, athlete that I represent, his whole talk is on making yourself vulnerable, right? He was looked at and put on this pedestal for years and years and kind of untouchable. And it wasn't until he got real with himself and took himself, off the pedestal and also started to get more vulnerable in his talks that his speaking career really skyrocketed. So if you are in that space, just know Scrappy's the new perfect. People are not they're not relating to polished and perfection, right? They want to hear about those bumps and bruises along the way and how you emerged from that.
I love what you just said about scrappy is the new perfection because that's completely true.
Yeah.
Completely true. I mean, it's about storytelling. It's about, if you know yourself, what matters most to you, and you have a message to share, and you can deliver it in a way that will impact and influence others, whether it's, it talked about within organizations and maybe corporate culture, or maybe it's around mental health. Maybe it's around suicide prevention. Maybe it's around just inclusion policies and belonging. Like there's so many things that if you're passionate about, that will come through naturally if it's something that matters deeply to you.
Yes. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how do we get those doors opened, right? In this age of mass competition, and still speaking is one of the most amazing careers you can have with regards to impact and revenue potential, prosperity, lifestyle, all of those things. But you're not going to sit back. Doesn't matter how many bureaus and agents you're aligned with. It's going to be like any other business where you put your elbow grease in right alongside. So how do you get those doors opened? And I guess more importantly, or just as importantly, is talk to me a little bit about where corporate event organizers and experienced, let's say, keynoters are and are not aligned. Like, how do we communicate in a way where they'll give us the time of day?
Oh, so much to
So much to unpack.
unpack. So really, where do you want me to start? Okay, let's start.
How do you get those doors open?
Organizers want the compelling stories. They want to have education part of that, but they have an expectation to that once they pick a budget, say it's engagement, it's education. Um, One thing that's really an interesting angle that's becoming more and more important that I should mention is value driven decisions. And so, what we're seeing in increased amounts every year that we've done this report is that it matters more to speakers that they're choosing event bookings based on the values of the organization that's requesting them.
Mm,
And so know your values. Like if you're not sure where you stand on certain causes, like you should know what matters most to you. um Within flexibility, one thing where it's an interesting differentiation, I would say, is, we ask this question because we are in such a polarizing time in society. And so we ask the question, how, for an event organizer, how likely are you to ask a speaker to change their content to be less polarizing or to benefit, be more general for an audience? And we've had some mixed things. Most of them would do it in some level. I think about it, I consider it. But overwhelmingly, speakers would be flexible, completely flexible. And I think that's really the takeaway here is um, be flexible. Like, you can be firm in the things that matter most. Like if you cannot afford to take less than a certain dollar amount for a speaking gig, like then you stand by that. But if you have the flexibility, you should consider what you can do to serve the client. I met with a speaker, a friend of mine that's in Texas when I was there recently, and he said a lot of things. He had so much insight, about speaking fees and keeping them level and knowing where his market is. But he also, had an opportunity that was presented by his daughter, and he said, I wasn't working that day, and they wanted somebody to come into a nonprofit and maybe had $1,000 budget. And you know what? $1,000 is more than $0 I was making that day, so I took it. So you never know, like, shoot your shot. You never know where that flexibility is going to come from. So keeping an open mind is so important, especially with so much competition right now.
yes.
But value driven
And
decision making has been
yes.
something that's kind of generational. It's like, as millennials come further into the workforce and higher up ranks in organizations, it's just more important. And making sure that you're clear about what your values are and that you know what the values of the organization you're going to are. Like if there's a match, that's a great situation to be in.
Yes. Okay. Before you go on, I definitely want to touch on some keys that you gave there. So, yes, know what your values are and stand on those, but also do your research, do your homework, and know what the values are of that organization, even if it happens to be a podcast, right? An unpaid engagement. Do your homework. know who you're speaking for and to, so that you can align your message with their values as well. And that's the surest way to get called back. Even I love that you said, if you're going to take a gig way under what your normal fee would be, go into it fully being fully aligned with their values and fully delivering at the highest level, because really your next biggest engagement can be right there in that room. Right. So treat it with the highest level of respect. Never be a diva, and give more than you receive. And that's where your opportunities are really going to come from.
Okay.
All right. Let's talk a little
Yeah, we
bit
see that
to
regularly
go ahead.
as we get to this event, and I'd like to bring them to my organization. You don't know necessarily where that next opportunity is going to, there's infinite opportunity out there, which y'all know, which is why we love this business. But um, just, put yourself out there, be willing to be flexible, be willing to be collaborative, and that's only going to benefit you.
Okay. We're going to touch on um, where corporate event organizers and keynoters are and are not aligned. And then I want to take a quick look at your report.
Sure. So, I mean, as far as where, they are pretty aligned. I mean, I think that the areas that we talked about earlier, where we talked about maybe, the sentiment around working together, that's one area where it's a little bit different from a speaker's perspective. They don't feel organizers have a respect for their time. And then on the other side of the house, they don't, maybe feel like the speaker doesn't understand the audience as well, or they're not being responsive enough, and we're so busy. And so those are just minor things that are manageable things. They are things that you can fix. Like there's not a huge differentiation. The biggest challenge in 2024 is really the two things. One, it's around supply and demand. It's having a lot of supply, and you need to really have your niche, because if you go into it like I am a motivational speaker and I want to inspire everybody, that is so broad and there's so many people in that space. But if you know that you have a knack or an expertise in the healthcare space, specifically around mental health improvements and the future of diagnosing things, or if you have a specific section of the area that you can focus on. If you are speaking about AI in finance, okay, that's like a cross section. I always recommend, if you know your specific unique value that you're bringing and you can communicate that, that's going to only help you in a crowded space like this.
Yes. Jennifer, and getting back to your report, your report was
Yes.
created to increase that transparency between the speaker booking process, the event organizer, and the speaker themselves, and just helping them to really understand what's going on in the speaker bookers' minds, right? And just kind of create a more streamlined process. So let's take a look at that. And then I would also like to take a quick look at how speakers can get a hold of you and what kind of application process you have. We'll take a quick look at that. So for those who are live with us, you'll see my screen. Those who watch us on YouTube, you'll see the screen from the recording. And then those who are just audio listening, will make sure that the link to both of these the to AAE's selection process, as well as their report, is in the show notes. So this is going to be the first time I've actually shared my screen on Riverside. That's the platform we use. So let's see how this goes. Okay, can you see this, Jennifer? I can't see you anymore, so you have
um,
to
I'm
speak.
not seeing it, but I don't know if my view is
Different.
set
Okay,
up for that.
producer, do we see that? Nope, she said they don't see it. Okay, well, I'm going to just talk about it, and then post production can kind of put this in. But essentially, this is the link direct to your industry benchmark report, which I assume, Jennifer, you guys do every year. Is that right?
Yeah, we do it every year, the first part of the year. And yeah, I mean, as far as we know, we'll be continuing to do this for years to come. One thing we are going to be doing as well, which might be of interest for your listeners, is that we will be providing some additional data points in the next couple of months around the different segments of the audiences we work with here. So we broke it down by like corporations, universities, and then nonprofit organizations. And so there are some subtle differences in the decision making process and budgets and things like that that you see when you start splitting that out. So I think that's really insightful information. So we'll be releasing that kind of over the next few months. But
Yes, very nice.
yeah,
And
there's definitely more to come there.
the fact that you've got those years, so you've got 2022, 2023, 2024, just right here on this screen, I can notice some changes in the trends. And then you also,
Oh, for sure.
instead of me opening it up, or in addition, right, to me opening it up and going through all 30 of those pages, you also synopsize it into the top 3 highlights of the year. And so I'm just going to look at a couple of these.
Hmm.
So 42 to 60, really
Sure.
no surprise here, but it is important and is relevant. 42 to 65% of event organizers say they are utilizing AI tools in their roles today. So that's pretty significant in probably the way that they are finding their speakers, in the way that they are maybe creating the verbiage for their call for speakers. However, they're looking for their talent, it's good that you know that they're utilizing AI and just really position yourself in a way that's going to make you
Mhm.
more relevant to them. The 3 things that make speakers most likely to accept an offer. So you're talking about the speakers to the organizer is whether the topic is relevant to their expertise. So that is 70 point. Oh, I
Mhm.
think I misread the first. The first one was 42.65%. This one is 70.37%. So whether the event pays their standard fee, 62% of speakers
Mhm.
are interested in that, obviously, and whether the event or organization aligns with their values, going back to the value piece. 41%, that's a little lower than I would think
Right.
it would be. But if, let's say, you're wanting to set yourself above and beyond in the industry, I have one speaker that I actually interviewed on this show who it was really really insightful that she was able to get, she gets consistent bookings all the time, and one of the ways that she does that is she is willing to work within budgets. So if you're one of those 62.43% of speakers who are really unwilling to move your budget, or move your fee to fit a budget, then you're basically out. And if you want to be a little bit more competitive, then you might get those engagements, kind of like you said, take a lower fee and maximize the other values that are generally pretty tremendous done right when taking a speaking engagement.
Mhm.
And then I'll read this last one. The most important goal event organizers have for their booked speakers are audience engagement. Wow, what an important insight. And Jennifer, this
Mhm.
report is perfectly aligned with what I've been getting on a regular basis. The Whereas maybe pre-pandemic or pre-whenever, right, it was more about somebody comes, they have their presentation, it's polished, it's perfect, and don't ask questions to the end, versus now what I am finding kind of across the board, whether it's an internal L&D kind of training or
Mhm.
kind of a keynote talk from a bigger stage, are these organizers are looking for interactivity. They want audience engagement. They want people to be compelled to really fully be there and take in the information, and basically a report saying the very same thing. Yeah,
Well,
really,
yeah,
really insightful.
I mean, you can't overestimate the importance of an audience engaging with the speaker. And there's also a lot more of, a mix of formats too. It's not just the traditional keynote speech on stage. It's being flexible to different formats, panel events, fireside chats, things like that. So all those different formats mean all different kinds of engagement opportunities with the audience and to really showcase what you know. But one thing that stuck out to me that I wanted to just reinforce and give you praise on was mentioning that, no divas, no divas. Being easy to work with, whether you work with us, whether you work with any bureau or you work directly with a client, you want to be easy to work with. So, I can tell you firsthand from us, we have speakers we work with regularly and they're so easy to work with and it's a great engagement. So really make sure you prioritize those relationships and consider the long-term impact of those relationships too. So I love what you
Yes,
said there.
long-term impact of the relationship. So well said, Jennifer. It is, this industry is about relationships. Prioritize that. And, if you get business
Mhm.
class and not first class, do not be a jerk about it, right? Just understand they're within their own budget confines as well. And the easier you are to work with, we speaker bookers talk, right? We agencies and bureaus, we speak to each other, and that messaging gets around and really might kick you out of the running, where we just take somebody who's easier to work with, who might also come with a compelling message. All right, so let's talk a little bit about how my listeners, how the Packed listeners get into your world and really dive into all of the beautiful possibilities and assets that you provide and services. And then we'll close with kind of our signature question, which I'm excited to hear what you're going to bring to the table there. So on the screen, before I stop sharing the screen, just in case it's working, we have your intake form. So it's basically a profile request form. And it says, we help event professionals inspire, entertain, delight, educate, and connect. So tell me, then the link to this form will be in the show notes. Tell us a little bit about the purpose of this form and how we really do get into your world.
Sure, happy to. We have an entire dedicated team at AAE that focuses solely on talent relationships. And so, to make that work effectively with the number of speakers that we have on our website, we have an intake process. And so, you go through the form and it basically walks you through everything that we would need to be able to make the decision about whether you're a good fit for our clients. And so, it'll ask you for speaking fees, ask for your speech topics, ask for your experience. All different information about your bio, any videos, any news, headshots, all of that information. And then it goes to our talent relationships team. And then based on demand for certain topics and different price points, then they will pull out the folks and add them to the website. So my suggestion is that if you try and you don't get through, try again next year.
Uh,
It might just be that it's not the right time. As we know, like topics ebb and flow, and sometimes certain topics are really hot, and other times they might decline a little bit. And so, if my advice is that go ahead and apply if you're interested in applying. Um, if you don't hear back, then definitely try again. So
yes. Oh
hopefully
my
that
goodness.
answers
So
the
talk
question.
about celebrity, right? There's no
Okay.
celebrity out there. There's no successful speaker out there who hasn't gotten a lot of either crickets or no's before they got their yeses. It's the ones who are tenacious and they persevere and they're consistent in their approach. Those are the ones who really rise above
Mhm.
and make it. So I'm really glad you brought up that element. So incredibly important. Jennifer, this has been
Sure.
incredibly insightful. I have taken, I think, 7 pages of notes just in our short talk. And
Wow.
that's me still trying to keep it together with regards
Mhm.
to interviewing. So I'm going to go back and re-listen because there's so much more here that you brought to the table. So this show is
Sure.
Speak
I'm
Pack.
so glad to be here.
Yes, so much beautiful wisdom. Um, I would love for you to close us out with really bringing a challenge to my audience with regards to making that bigger impact with their voice and making that bigger impact with their speaking career, because obviously as they do better as a speaker, they get to do better for the world, right, with their messaging. What are some just real practical
Mhm.
tactical a practical tactical challenge that you can leave us with, that if we put it into place, it can really move the dial in our careers?
So I am a huge fan of mentorship. I have overseen a mentorship program with the AMA Triangle, and I am a mentor. Have been mentored. Find a mentor. Find somebody who has done where you want to be find somebody there, build a relationship with them, and be able to then, ask the hard questions and take a clear look at their perspective on where you're going. I just think that's an invaluable way to build a career, no matter what career path you're in. It's so important to have mentors, to have people who have been down that road before. And I think in the speaking world, it's a surprising community of people in that most of the speakers I've talked to that have decades of experience are more than willing to talk about the business. So find those people.
I love that. I love that. Okay, as a speaker mentor myself, of course I love that, but I have found that those speakers and influencers out there who are continually, no matter what level they rise to, that they are continually seeking that next level mentor, continually willing to invest in bettering themselves and scaling and getting to that next level. Because next, each time you reach a new peak, your vision changes, the data you collected along the way changes. So there's now you see other peaks and valleys, right, that you're going to be traversing. So link arms with that next level mentor to keep scaling so that your message continues to scale. Beautiful, beautiful advice. I certainly practice that myself, right? Each time I reach a new milestone in my career, I'm looking for that next mentor. I think the most long the speakers who have the most longevity and the most impact in this space definitely embrace that. So thank you for bringing that to the table. All right. No question why you
Definitely.
are the president of marketing for AAE. You brought so much goodness here, Jennifer, and thank you for spending your valuable
Oh my
time
gosh. Well,
sharing
I'm
your.
vice president. I don't want to give kudos to to our C-suite. Yeah, and no, it's been a great journey. And you know what I tell friends that I meet that like working in this space with speakers is like my bonus job. Like the fact that I get to do what I do and promote the services that we offer, it's really honestly it's a pleasure. So
Yes. Okay. And vice was right above president. So vice president. But still, how incredible that
vice.
yeah, that you actually have devoted your life to this and your career to this, to helping other speakers, right, ascend so that their messages and the impact that they make ascend with them. So again, thank you for being a guest today, and I so appreciate your time
Sure.
and all the value that you brought to my audience.
Well, thank you so much for having me today. I appreciate it. And best of luck, everybody.
Yes, get your voice out there, and until the next episode, ciao ciao for now.